They say grief makes you vulnerable. My stepson's wife certainly thought so when she befriended me after my husband died, playing the concerned daughter-in-law while plotting to steal his life insurance. What she didn't know was that I'd already heard her drunk confession about poisoning her first husband, and the FBI agents weren't just listening through the wire I wore to our tea party. They were positioned in my guest bedroom with weapons drawn. My name is Lorraine Mitchell, and I'm 72 years old. Before I tell you what happened, I want to know, where are you watching this from? Drop your city and state in the comments, because what I'm about to share makes you question everything you think you know about family, trust, and how far people will go for money. My husband Richard died on a Tuesday morning in April. A heart attack. Sudden, devastating, final. I'd woken up that morning the same way I'd woken up every morning for 18 years, with Richard's arm draped across my waist, his breathing steady and warm against my shoulder. We'd had coffee together. He'd kissed my forehead and told me he loved me. 2 hours later, he collapsed in the garage while organizing his fishing equipment for a trip we'd planned for the following weekend. The paramedics said he was gone before he hit the concrete floor. The doctors said his arteries were 80% blocked, that these things happen, that we should be grateful he didn't suffer. I wasn't grateful. I was shattered. Richard had been my second marriage, his third. We'd met at a community theater production where we were both volunteering, him building sets, me handling costumes. And he was 75 when he died, but vibrant, active, the kind of man who still climbed ladders to clean gutters and insisted on mowing his own lawn even when I begged him to hire someone. He had a laugh that filled rooms and a stubborn streak a mile wide. He was my best friend. Richard had 2 children from his previous marriages, a daughter named Patricia in Seattle, who I'd met exactly twice in 18 years, and a stepson, Derek, who lived 40 minutes away in Columbus. Derek was 38, worked in pharmaceutical sales, drove a BMW he couldn't quite afford, and had always maintained a polite but distant relationship with me. I understood. I was the woman who'd married his father late in life, not his mother. I never tried to be anything other than Richard's wife, and Derek seemed to appreciate that boundary. And the funeral was small, 30 people, mostly Richard's golf buddies and neighbors. Derek came with his wife, Tiffany, a blonde woman in her early 30s with the kind of Instagram-perfect appearance that looked expensive to maintain. Perfectly highlighted hair, designer dress, makeup applied with professional precision. She'd hugged me at the service, her perfume so overwhelming I'd nearly choked. Her whispered, "I'm so sorry for your loss," delivered with the exact same inflection you'd use ordering a latte. I didn't think much of it then. Grief has a way of dulling your perception, turning the world into background noise while you navigate the sharp edges of loss. Everything felt muted, distant, unreal. The days after the funeral blurred together. Well-meaning neighbors brought casseroles I couldn't eat. Richard's golf partners came by to collect his clubs and share stories that made me cry. I spent hours sitting in his recliner, wearing his cardigan, trying to catch the fading scent of his cologne on the fabric. Richard had been meticulous about his affairs. He'd updated his will 2 years prior, left me the house and most of his assets, and, this is where it becomes relevant, he'd maintained a substantial life insurance policy through his former employer, $1.2 million to be exact. The beneficiary was me, with a provision that if I died within 5 years of him, the money would automatically transfer to Derek. I learned all this from Richard's attorney, Gerald Hoffman, a week after the funeral. Gerald had been Richard's friend for 30 years, a straight-talking man who didn't believe in sugarcoating reality. "Lorraine," he'd said, sliding documents across his desk, "Richard wanted to ensure you were taken care of. The insurance company will process the claim within 30 to 45 days. Be prepared for people to come out of the woodwork. Money changes people. Even good people." He'd been more right than either of us knew. Tiffany called me 3 days after my meeting with Gerald. I remember because it was a Saturday afternoon, and I was sitting on the back porch staring at Richard's neglected garden, trying to remember if I'd eaten lunch. Lorraine, hi, it's Tiffany, Derek's wife. I've been thinking about you so much. I know this must be such a difficult time, and I realized at the funeral that we've never really gotten to know each other, and that's such a shame. I'd love to take you to lunch this week if you're up for it. My treat. No pressure at all, but I think it would be good for both of us. I should have been suspicious immediately. In the 5 years Derek and Tiffany had been married, she'd called me exactly twice. Once to invite us to their wedding, once to thank us for the wedding gift. We weren't enemies, but we certainly weren't friends. But grief makes you lonely, and loneliness makes you grateful for any extended hand, even one that shouldn't be trusted. That's very kind of you, I'd said, my voice rusty from days of not talking to anyone. I'd like that. We met at a bistro in German Village. Tiffany arrived 15 minutes late, apologetic, her designer handbag worth more than my grocery budget. She ordered a salad she barely touched and spent 2 hours asking questions about Richard, how we'd met, what he was like, about our marriage, and then, seamlessly, about our finances. Richard must have been so successful in his career, she'd said, twirling her fork through arugula and candied pecans. Derek's mentioned several times how financially secure his father was, how he never had to worry about money. That must be such a comfort to you now. He worked hard his whole life, I'd replied carefully, something about the question making me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't quite name. He believed in being prepared, in planning for the future. That's so wise. So responsible. Her smile was perfectly calibrated, warm but not too warm, concerned but not intrusive. Did he leave everything in order? I know dealing with estates can be so complicated and overwhelming, especially when you're grieving. All that paperwork, all those decisions. His attorney handled most of it. Richard was very organized. Everything was documented. She'd leaned forward then, her elbows on the table, her eyes wide with what I now recognize as manufactured concern. I hope you're not overwhelmed with all of it. Managing finances, making investment decisions, understanding all those legal documents. It can be so much, especially if Richard always handled that side of things. If you ever need help with anything, paperwork, decisions, whatever, please know Derek and I are here for you. Your family, Lorraine. We want to help. Family. The word felt wrong coming from her mouth, like a costume that didn't quite fit. A performance she hadn't quite mastered. But I was lonely, and she was persistent. And I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, Richard's death had created an opportunity for Derek and me to finally build a real relationship, with Tiffany as the bridge between us. I was a fool. Over the next 6 weeks, Tiffany inserted herself into my life with surgical precision. She called twice a week. She showed up with coffee and pastries. She invited me to her book club, acted like the doting daughter-in-law I'd never had. She made everything seem natural, organic, offering to drive me places she was heading anyway. Helping sort Richard's clothes is something she was happy to do. I let her because I was lonely, and she was persistent, and part of me wanted to believe it was real. Derek came around too, but less frequently. Always uncomfortable, checking his phone constantly. He never asked about the insurance money. That was always Tiffany, asking if I'd received everything from the insurance company yet, wondering if I had plans for the money, suggesting I needed professional financial guidance. The friendship might have continued indefinitely, with me slowly signing over more and more control of my life to Tiffany's influence, if not for one Saturday evening in early June. Tiffany had invited me to a backyard barbecue at their house with several couples. I'd almost declined, exhausted from sorting Richard's belongings, but Tiffany insisted. You can't isolate yourself. Richard wouldn't want that. Come for just an hour. So I went. I made small talk with strangers who didn't know why I was there. Then I watched Tiffany drink 4 glasses of wine in 90 minutes. I'd planned to leave at 8, was gathering my purse when I heard voices from the kitchen. Tiffany talking to one of her girlfriends. I'm telling you, Amber, it's like winning the lottery without buying a ticket. Derek's dad left her everything, including this massive insurance policy. Over $1 million. All we have to do is wait for the right moment, get her to trust us completely, and then move in. I'd frozen in the hallway, hidden by the wall, my purse clutched against my chest, my heart suddenly hammering. The girlfriend, Amber, apparently, had laughed, a sound that held both amusement and discomfort. "You're terrible, Tiff. What's the plan exactly?" Befriend the lonely widow, become completely indispensable. And then when she's vulnerable and confused enough, convince her she needs help managing all that money. Derek's a financial advisor, after all. Once we have control of the accounts, it's just a matter of time. We can charge management fees, move money around, make investments that benefit us. She's 72 and doesn't understand half of what's in those documents. Easy mark. My hands had gone cold. My entire body had gone cold. Amber's voice again, quieter now. "That's pretty calculated. Remind me never to marry you. Does this strategy work every time, or is this a new approach?" Worked with husband number 1. The words hung in the air like poison gas, so casual, so matter-of-fact. Silence. Then, "Wait, what? Your first husband? Michael?" Tiffany's laugh was sharp, bitter, ugly, nothing like the warm, friendly sounds she'd made all evening. "Please." Michael was worth $500,000 in life insurance, made it look like a heart attack. Little bit of antifreeze in his protein shakes over 6 months. Completely tasteless, completely odorless, and by the time the symptoms showed up, his organs were already failing. The doctors never suspected a thing. They wrote it up as accidental exposure from his job. I collected the insurance, invested it, and moved on. I'd stopped breathing. The hallway tilted. "You're joking. Tell me you're joking." Amber's voice had gone quiet, shocked. "I'm really not. And before you get all judgmental on me, Amber, he was cheating on me with his secretary. He deserved what he got, and I deserved that money. Besides, and I learned something important. Insurance companies don't ask a lot of questions when the death looks natural. Now I've got Derek, who's legitimately employed and completely clueless, and once Lorraine signs over power of attorney or puts the insurance money in Derek's investment accounts, we'll be set for life. 2 or 3 years of management fees and strategic investments, and we're talking about several $100,000 minimum. That's insane, Tiff. That's actual murder. You can't just... I can, and I did. Look, this is how the world works, okay? You think people get ahead by playing fair? You think I'm going back to working retail like I did when I met Michael? Absolutely not. I figured out how the game works, and I'm playing it smart. Lorraine's old. She's alone. She doesn't have anyone else. And she'll do whatever we suggest because she's desperate for family, for connection. It's actually kind of sad. And if she says no, then we'll have to be more creative. Old people have accidents all the time. Falls downstairs, medication mix-ups, carbon monoxide leaks. But I don't think it'll come to that. She trusts me. I can see it in her eyes. I'd left through the front door without saying goodbye, without looking back, my entire body shaking so violently I could barely get my key in my car's ignition. I'd driven home on autopilot, my mind replaying those words over and over. Made it look like a heart attack, antifreeze in his protein shakes, $500,000 in life insurance. Tiffany had murdered her first husband, and now she was planning to steal from me, possibly planning worse if I didn't cooperate. I didn't sleep that night. At 7 a.m., I called Gerald Hoffman. "Gerald, I need you to find out everything about Tiffany Carver. Her maiden name was Westbrook. She was married before Derek to someone named Michael. I need to know how he died." He called back in 18 hours. "Lorraine, sit down. Michael Westbrook died 4 years ago at 36. Acute kidney failure from ethylene glycol, antifreeze poisoning, ruled accidental exposure from his mechanic job. His life insurance paid Tiffany $480,000. She remarried Derek 14 months later. Was there an investigation? Brief. But Michael's sister Catherine contested it, said he was obsessive about safety, that the poisoning didn't make sense. Not enough evidence to challenge. Tiffany got the payout. Gerald, and I heard her confess to murdering him last night. She admitted poisoning him for insurance money and threatened me if I don't cooperate. Silence. Then, "You need to contact law enforcement today." I didn't call the local police. I called the FBI. My reasoning was methodical, shaped by decades of watching true crime documentaries with Richard. If Tiffany had successfully murdered one husband and collected insurance money in one state, and was now planning to manipulate me out of insurance money in another state, this was likely insurance fraud that crossed state lines, which made it a federal crime. Plus, I'd watched enough Dateline to know that confessions overheard at dinner parties without corroboration or recording wouldn't be enough to convict anyone. I needed evidence. Real, admissible, undeniable evidence. And I needed professionals who knew how to get it without putting me at risk. The FBI field office in Columbus connected me with Special Agent Victoria Reeves 2 days after my call. We met at a coffee shop in Upper Arlington, away from my neighborhood, away from anyone who might recognize me or report back to Tiffany. Agent Reeves was in her mid-40s, with sharp hazel eyes and dark hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. She wore slacks and a blazer that probably concealed a weapon. She ordered black coffee and led me to a corner table where we could talk quietly. I told her everything. The befriending, the financial questions, the dinner party conversation, Michael's death, Tiffany's confession, her threats about accidents befalling elderly people. Agent Reeves listened without interrupting, to taking notes on a small tablet, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes intense with focus. When I finished, she set down her stylus and looked at me directly. "Mrs. Mitchell, what you're describing is conspiracy to commit fraud at minimum. If your account of Michael Westbrook's death is accurate, we're potentially looking at first-degree murder, insurance fraud, and possibly conspiracy to commit additional crimes. The challenge is that without physical evidence or a recorded confession, there's very little we can do to build a prosecutable case." "Then help me get a recorded confession." She studied me for a long moment. "You understand what you're proposing? You'd be wearing a recording device. I'm engaging with someone who's potentially poisoned one person to death and is planning to defraud you of over $1 million. If she suspects you know anything, if she thinks you're a threat, this isn't without significant risk. She thinks I'm a lonely, naive widow who's desperate for family. She won't suspect anything because she's convinced I'm too old and too stupid to be a threat. And if she does suspect something, then I need to know what I'm dealing with either way. Agent Reeves, this woman has spent 6 weeks befriending me specifically to steal my dead husband's money. She admitted to poisoning her first husband. She threatened my life. I can't just let that go. I won't." Agent Reeves was quiet for a long moment, and I watched her weigh the risks, the ethics, the complications. Finally, she nodded. "Let me talk to my supervisor and our unit chief. If we move forward with this, you'll be working with a full investigative team. We'll brief you extensively on procedures and safety protocols. We'll have agents nearby at all times during any operation, and you'll have safe words and emergency procedures to abort if you feel threatened. But Mrs. Mitchell, I need you to understand, this is dangerous. People who've killed once often have fewer inhibitions about killing again." "I understand, but I'm 72 years old. If I don't do this and she gets away with it, I'll spend whatever time I have left knowing I let a murderer go free. That's not something I can live with." If you're watching this and want to see how justice unfolds, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. And the FBI moved quickly. Within a week, I was in a conference room with 4 agents, being briefed on surveillance operations and recording devices. Agent Reeves explained the plan. "We've reopened Michael Westbrook's investigation. His sister Catherine has provided testimony, but we need Tiffany's confession on tape, admitting to murder and her plans for you." Agent Torres showed me the recording device, tiny as a button. Voice-activated 50-foot range. You'll also have a panic button. Press it and we move in immediately. They coached me for hours on conversation techniques, how to guide dialogue naturally, how to create an environment where Tiffany felt safe revealing everything. "Your goal," Agent Reeves said, "is to seem vulnerable. Let her think she's winning. We'll be listening from your guest bedroom. Now, if anything goes wrong, help is 30 seconds away. The plan was straightforward. I would call Tiffany, tell her I'd been feeling overwhelmed managing Richard's estate, and ask for her advice about what to do with all this money. I'd invite her to my house for tea, somewhere private, somewhere she'd feel safe speaking freely. The FBI would wire my living room with audio equipment, position agents in my guest bedroom and garage, and have an unmarked surveillance van on my street. If Tiffany revealed her plans, discussed Michael's death, or made any threatening statements, it would all be recorded. And if she became dangerous, armed federal agents would be less than 20 feet away. I made the call on a Wednesday afternoon exactly as rehearsed. Tiffany, hi, it's Lorraine. I hope I'm not bothering you, but I was wondering if you might have some free time tomorrow afternoon. There's something I'd really like your advice about. Her response was immediate, eager. Of course, Lorraine. Is everything okay? You sound a little stressed. I'm fine, it's just the insurance company sent the payout last week, and honestly, Tiffany, I'm terrified. I've never dealt with this much money before. Richard always handled our finances, and now I have over $1 million sitting in my account and I don't know what to do with it. I thought maybe you and Derek could help me understand my options. Oh, Lorraine, of course we can help. This is exactly what Derek does professionally. What time works for you tomorrow? Would 2 o'clock be okay? I can make tea. We can talk through everything. That's perfect. I'll be there. Now, and Lorraine, don't worry. We're going to take care of you. That's what family does. After I hung up, Agent Reeves emerged from my kitchen where she'd been listening. Excellent work. She took the bait completely. Tomorrow, remember everything we practiced. Be yourself. A widow who's confused and frightened about money. Let her think she's in control. We'll handle everything else. That night, I barely slept. But not from fear, from anticipation. Tiffany had underestimated me. She'd seen an elderly woman, alone, grieving, and assumed I was an easy target. She'd thought my age made me weak, that my loss made me desperate, that my loneliness made me manipulable. She was about to learn how wrong she'd been. Thursday afternoon arrived with clear skies and unseasonable warmth. I'd been awake since 5 a.m., preparing. I'd made cucumber sandwiches with the crusts cut off, set out my good china, the set Richard and I had received as a wedding gift, and brewed chamomile tea. The recording device was active against my sternum, invisible beneath my cardigan, its weight a constant reminder of what I was about to do. 2 FBI agents, Torres and another agent named Chen, were positioned in my guest bedroom with the door closed, monitoring equipment set up, weapons holstered but accessible. 2 more agents were in the surveillance van parked 3 houses down, watching every approach to my house through high-powered cameras. Agent Reeves had done a final check of all equipment 30 minutes before Tiffany's scheduled arrival, then left through the back door to join the surveillance team. "You're going to do great," she'd told me, and her hand briefly on my shoulder. "Remember, we're listening to everything. If you feel threatened at any point, just say the phrase, 'I need to take my medication,' and we'll come in immediately. You're not alone in this." But I was alone when Tiffany knocked on my door at exactly 2 o'clock. She stood on my porch carrying a bottle of wine and wearing her most sympathetic expression, her makeup perfect, her smile warm, her eyes calculating. "Lorraine, thank you so much for calling me. I've been so worried about you." I led her to the living room, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of what I was about to do. I was about to face down a murderer with nothing but my words and the knowledge that armed federal agents were listening. "I'm so glad you could come," I said, pouring tea with deliberately shaky hands, playing the role of confused widow with all the authenticity of genuine fear beneath the performance. "I've been feeling so overwhelmed, Tiffany. The insurance company sent the payment last week, $1.2 million just deposited into my checking account, and I'm terrified. What if I make the wrong decisions? What if I lose it all? I've never had this kind of money. Richard always handled everything." Her eyes lit up with barely concealed excitement. Oh, Lorraine, I completely understand. That's an enormous amount of responsibility, especially when you're grieving and not thinking clearly. But you don't have to handle this alone. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Derek is a certified financial advisor. He specializes in helping people manage large sums, on creating investment portfolios, ensuring money works for you instead of just sitting in an account, losing value to inflation. He could absolutely help you with this. I don't want to be a burden to you and Derek. You're not a burden, Lorraine. You're family. She reached across the coffee table and squeezed my hand, her grip firm, possessive. This is what we're here for. Derek could set up a comprehensive investment portfolio, manage everything for you, handle all the complicated decisions. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. Would I need to give him access to my accounts? Well, yes, but only for management purposes. You'd still be the owner of all assets. He'd just handle the day-to-day investment decisions, the trading, the portfolio balancing. It would be so much easier for you, and honestly, or at your age, with your limited financial knowledge, trying to manage this yourself could be disastrous. You could lose everything. The condescension in her voice was barely masked now, the pretense of concern slipping as she sensed victory. I poured more tea, letting my hand shake. I trust you, Tiffany. You've been so kind to me these past months. After Richard died, I felt so alone. I don't know what I would have done without you. We care about you so much. Her voice had taken on that honey-sweet quality I now recognized as completely false. And honestly, Lorraine, someone in your position needs to be very careful. There are people out there who would absolutely take advantage of a widow with money. You need family protecting you. The irony was so thick I wanted to laugh or scream. Instead, and I looked at her with carefully crafted vulnerability. Can I ask you something personal? Of course, anything. You were married before Derek, weren't you? I remember someone mentioning that at the funeral. Did your first husband leave you financially secure when he passed? I'm just trying to understand how other women have managed this kind of loss and transition. Her expression shifted, caution flickering across her features before settling back into sympathy. Yes, I was married before. To Michael. He died very suddenly. Heart condition. It was completely unexpected. How awful, I'm so sorry. Did he have life insurance? He did, yes. It helped me get back on my feet, start over. Her voice was careful now, measured. I nodded, letting silence settle between us. Then, it's strange, isn't it? How money becomes this complicated thing after someone dies. You're grieving, missing them, and simultaneously you have to make all these practical financial decisions. It feels almost disrespectful to even think about money when someone you loved is gone. It is strange. She sipped her tea, and I saw something shift in her eyes, a decision being made. But you learn to be practical. You learn that survival matters more than sentiment, that money is just a tool, and the world doesn't stop turning just because you're sad. What do you mean? She set down her teacup, and I watched the mask begin to slip, the wine I'd poured mixing with whatever impulse drove her to confess, to share, to prove her own cleverness. I mean that sometimes life gives you opportunities, and you'd be a fool not to take them. My first husband, Michael, he wasn't a good man, Lorraine. He cheated on me, lied to me constantly, planned to leave me with nothing after I'd supported him through school, through his career. So when he died, yes, the insurance money felt like justice, like compensation for everything he'd put me through. That must have been incredibly painful, dealing with betrayal and loss at the same time. It was liberating. Her voice had an edge now, the performance falling away. You want to know the truth, Lorraine? The real truth? I made sure he died. My heart hammered against the recording device. What do you mean? I mean I poisoned him. Antifreeze, ethylene glycol, completely tasteless, completely odorless. I put it in his protein shakes every single morning for 6 months. Just a little bit. Nothing dramatic. His body slowly accumulated it. His kidneys started failing, then his liver. By the time anyone realized something was seriously wrong, his organs were already destroyed beyond repair. They thought it was accidental exposure from his job as a mechanic, and I got $500,000 in insurance money. The room felt like it had stopped breathing. Tiffany, you're saying you murdered your husband. I'm saying I freed myself from a man who was going to ruin my life. She leaned forward, her eyes intense, and I saw true sociopathy behind the carefully maintained facade. That money let me build a new life, a better life. I invested it carefully, lived off the returns, found Derek, who's sweet but not exactly ambitious, and now we're here. And once you sign over financial control to Derek, well, we'll have access to Richard's insurance money too. Not all of it at once, obviously. That would be too suspicious. But enough. We'll charge management fees, skim from investment transactions, redirect funds. Over time, we're talking about several $100,000, and you'll never even know it's happening. And if I don't agree to this? Her smile went cold, predatory. Then you'd be making a very unwise decision, Lorraine. You're 72 years old. You live alone. Accidents happen to elderly people constantly. Falls downstairs, accidental overdoses of medication, carbon monoxide leaks, house fires from forgotten stoves. It would be tragic, but entirely believable. And then Derek inherits anyway, according to Richard's will, and we get the money eventually. That I'm just offering you a gentler path. She just threatened my life while confessing to murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and extortion. I looked past her shoulder to the hallway where Agent Reeves had appeared, weapon drawn with 3 other agents behind her. FBI, hands where I can see them. Don't move. Tiffany's face went from smug confidence to absolute shock in less than a second. She spun in her seat, saw the agents, saw their weapons, saw the badge Agent Reeves was holding up. What? No, I was joking. Lorraine, tell them I was joking. Agent Torres moved around the couch and took Tiffany's arm, guiding her to stand. Tiffany Carver, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, extortion, and we'll be adding murder charges pending investigation. You have the right to remain silent. This is entrapment. She set me up. Lorraine, you bitch, you set me up. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. I sat on my couch, watching federal agents handcuff the woman who'd pretended to be my friend while planning to rob me, possibly kill me, watching her scream and curse and claim she'd been joking, that I'd misunderstood, that this was all a terrible mistake. Neighbors had gathered on the sidewalk, drawn by the commotion, by the FBI vehicles now openly visible on my quiet suburban street. Agent Reeves approached me after Tiffany had been placed in the back of an unmarked vehicle, her face red with fury or tears or both. "Mrs. Mitchell, are you all right?" "I'm fine." And I was. I felt clear, focused, righteous. "Shah, you did exceptionally well. That recording is absolutely airtight. She confessed to first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, extortion, and she made direct threats against your life. Combined with the evidence we've gathered on Michael Westbrook's case and the financial records we've subpoenaed, she's looking at multiple felony charges and potentially decades in prison." "What about Derek?" "We've been monitoring his phone and email communications since you first contacted us. From everything we can determine, he had no knowledge of Michael's murder. He suspected Tiffany was trying to manipulate you financially. We found texts where he questioned her motives, but there's no evidence he was aware of any criminal plans. He's likely a victim in this too, all married to a sociopath who targeted him for his job and his connection to you." I nodded slowly. "She played all of us." "She underestimated you, though. That was her biggest mistake." Agent Reeves smiled, genuine warmth in her expression. "Most people would have been too frightened to do what you did. You're remarkably brave." "I wasn't brave. I was angry. I was determined. I was a 72-year-old widow who'd been targeted by a predator, and I'd decided that being old didn't mean being helpless. Tiffany was charged with first-degree murder in Michael Westbrook's death, attempted fraud, conspiracy to commit additional crimes, extortion, and making terroristic threats. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The recording of our tea party was played in court multiple times, and her voice cold and calculating as she detailed poisoning Michael, her plans for Richard's money, her threats against my life. I testified for 4 hours. Michael's sister, Catherine, testified, finally able to tell her story to people who believed her. Derek testified for the prosecution, visibly shaken by what his wife had done, by what she'd planned. The jury deliberated for just under 4 hours, guilty on all counts. She's currently serving 30 years to life in a federal prison in Ohio, with additional state charges pending that could extend her sentence even further. Derek apologized to me after the sentencing, his face aged by stress and betrayal. We had coffee once, a quiet conversation where we both acknowledged that Tiffany had used both of us. He's since divorced her and moved to another state, or trying to rebuild his life far from the wreckage she created. We exchange Christmas cards now. It's enough. As for me, I still live in the house Richard and I shared. I can see his fishing pole in the garage, smell his cologne on the cardigan I still wear when it's cold. The insurance money is invested conservatively, managed by a reputable firm Gerald recommended, generating enough income that I've been able to donate to causes Richard cared about and volunteer at a local hospice, helping other widows navigate the early days of loss. Sometimes people ask me if I was scared during the investigation, during that tea party with a confessed murderer sitting 3 feet away. The truth is, I was furious more than frightened. Tiffany saw a grieving elderly woman and thought she could exploit me, steal from me, potentially kill me. She thought my age made me weak, that my loss made me vulnerable, that my loneliness made me an easy target. She learned that grief doesn't make you weak. Sometimes it makes you steal. Sometimes it makes you see clearly what matters. Truth, justice, and the knowledge that being 72 doesn't mean surrendering to people who think you're too old to fight back. Richard always told me I was stronger than I gave myself credit for. He was right. And Tiffany, she's learning that the lonely widow she tried to manipulate was the last person she should have underestimated. My name is Lorraine Mitchell, and this is how I caught a killer.